According to Reuters, the Republican senator's skepticism over Gabbard stemmed from her inability to answer, quote, tough questions during a series of meetings on Capitol Hill last week. I still don't understand why more people aren't talking about the fact that she is in a cult. She is in a cult. She's in a cult. Why does nobody talk about this? Tulsi Gabbard, ladies and gentlemen, might be in trouble. Former Representative Tulsi Gabbard faces an uphill battle to become Donald Trump's Director of National Intelligence after reportedly failing to woo senators on Capitol Hill last week. On Tuesday, Reuters reported that 8 Republican senators had expressed doubts about Trump's nomination of Gabbard to lead the nation's intelligence community. Citing 3 unnamed sources, 1 within the Trump team and 2 with knowledge of the transition, the report said that there were serious doubts about Gabbard's qualifications and her ability to secure the necessary votes in the Senate during her confirmation process. This is such a big question mark going into the next, going into, late January when these confirmation hearings begin. Nobody really knows if we're going to see any political courage from any of these Republican senators to oppose these nominations. This is anonymous sources desperately trying to hold on to power, so they hide behind the media to spread these falsities that directly subvert the will of the American people. Trump transition spokesperson Alexa Henning told Reuters in a statement, "This is the playbook. You should not be able to pass editors with a bunch of anonymous sources claiming something." Henning posted to X, formerly Twitter, in response to the report. Newsweek contacted the Trump transition team and Gabbard for comment via email outside normal business hours. Trump, who is set to return to office on January 20th, has seen some of his cabinet nominees face hurdles and pushback. 8 days after being announced as Trump's pick for Attorney General, former Representative Matt Gaetz withdrew his name from consideration. More on Matt Gaetz in just a minute. In a post on X on November 21st, Gaetz said his confirmation was unfairly becoming a distraction to the critical work of the Trump-Vance transition. His withdrawal followed days of debate over whether a congressional report detailing allegations of sexual misconduct and drug use, which Gaetz denies, should be made public. There's an update on that today. It seems as though the House Ethics Committee has voted to make that report public. And that'll happen, I think, next week. And Gaetz is not happy about that. Breaking news as of this morning. Pete Hegseth, a former Fox News contributor whom the president-elect nominated for Secretary of Defense, has also faced intense scrutiny over his lack of relevant experience and allegations of alcohol use, sexual misconduct, and mismanagement of 2 veterans organizations. According to Reuters, the Republican senator's skepticism over Gabbard stemmed from her inability to answer, quote, tough questions during a series of meetings on Capitol Hill last week. Sources told the outlet that the lawmakers were also concerned about her lack of experience for the nation's top spy role in her meeting with Syrian President Bashar al-Assad in 2017 while serving in the House of Representatives for Hawaii's 2nd District. Gabbard, who served in Congress as a Democrat for 8 years before leaving office in 2021, officially joined the Republican Party in October. Following key victories in the 2024 congressional elections, Republicans are set to control 53 seats in the incoming Senate. With this narrow majority, the party will need to secure almost unanimous support for Gabbard's nomination if she is unable to win over senators from her former party. So more wiggle room than the Democrats had the first couple years of Biden's presidency. The difference between 50 senators and 53 is a lot. That's a meaningful difference right there. Senator Rand Paul, a Republican from Kentucky, via X on Twitter said, proud to support Tulsi Gabbard as Director of National Intelligence. Her military service and dedication to our constitutional rights makes her a strong choice for this critical role. Senator Marsha Blackburn, a Republican from Tennessee, in an interview with Newsmax on Tuesday, with Tulsi, you're going to have a real seasoned leader. How does it, what's her experience being a leader? Maybe in the National Guard? She is someone who is not going to pull a lot of punches. She's going to look at the information she is given, and she's not going to politicize it. She will tell you the truth, and that is what the American people are wanting. Senator Tammy Duckworth, a Democrat from Illinois, in an interview with Forbes on Tuesday, said, I have deep concerns about the fact that she might be compromised. I mean, it was Russian-controlled media that called her a Russian asset. I also think she's not qualified for the position. She's not really done anything in the intelligence world, so I don't know that that's the right person to run our nation's intelligence agencies. According to the odds on Polymarket, the crypto-based betting platform whose users accurately predicted the presidential election, Gabbard's chances of securing the cabinet position have dipped following the reports of her meetings on Capitol Hill last week. Polymarket has her odds of confirmation at 60%, the lowest among Trump's announced picks. It marks a 7-point drop since Tuesday morning and a steep decline from the 80% odds Gabbard enjoyed in the days immediately after Trump nominated her for the position.
President-elect Trump's nominee, Tulsi Gabbard, was on Capitol Hill today, meeting with senators on both sides of the aisle in her bid to...
I still don't understand why more people aren't talking about the fact that she is in a cult. She is in a cult. She's in a cult. She is in a cult. Why does nobody talk about this? How is this not highly relevant?
Calling from a 415 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, it's Amy.
Oh, hi,
From
Amy.
San Francisco.
Amy from San Francisco. What's on your mind?
Well, the usual, love you guys. You're wonderful. Been listening to you, Sam, since God was a boy. But
Since God was a boy? Is that what she just said?
I wanted to, Emma, your girl crush, Tulsi Gabbard. I heard this other podcast,
Mike Preisner.
Anonymous.
Oh, yeah. Mike Preisner was talking about this.
He was on QAnon Anonymous,
Yeah.
yep.
Yep, and I mean, she's like, you always say that she looks like she's in a cult or a cult leader. She grew up in this
Yeah,
crazy
no,
cult.
I don't say that just to be, I guess, mean.
It's true, bro. Oh, why is it all up? Sorry, I'll change it in a minute. Fox News' chief national security correspondent Jennifer Griffin shared a deep dive into Tulsi Gabbard's affiliation with a new religious movement called the Science of Identity Foundation over the weekend. Tulsi Gabbard's long involvement with the Science of Identity Foundation raises questions about the judgment and autonomy needed to advise the president on national security. Group also noted that Gabbard's parents are longtime members of the group and that she was born into its teachings. We've looked into this before. They're super homophobic. What's it called again? Hold on. The Science of Identity Foundation, or SIF, is a new religious movement that professes to combine some teachings of yoga with aspects of Gaudiya Vaishnava theology. Chris Butler, aka Siddhaswarupananda, Jesus Christ, Paramahamsa, in the 1970s, it was based in the U.S. state of Hawaii. It's faced criticism for its former condemnation of homosexuality and hostility towards Islam. Stances that Butler revised in the early 2000s and publicly acknowledged in 2019, though these changes have not been recognized in media reports. Chris Butler, son of a communist anti-war activist, had entered the 1960s counterculture while enrolled at the University of Hawaii. Soon he joined the burgeoning Hare Krishna movement as a guru with the name Sai Young, and soon got a group of disciples. After being publicly denounced by Swami Prabhupada, the leading exponent of the movement in the USA, Butler joined the International Society for Krishna Consciousness and received the name... I'm not going to do that. Within a few years, their relationship had soured as Butler deviated from ISKCON's ways, choosing to marry and allow his disciples to keep their heads unshaved. After the death of Prabhupada in 1977, Butler broke away from ISKCON and founded SIF, then known as the Harinama Society. So it's theology. The organization combines the teachings of yoga with aspects of Gaudiya Vaishnava theology. Followers must practice vegetarianism and are not allowed to gamble, smoke, drink alcohol, take drugs, or have illicit sex. Butler had, through the early 2000s, given controversial lectures regarding homosexuality and related topics. In 2019, he publicly acknowledged that the language and tone he had used was inflammatory, combative, and harsh. A few months later, he said, quote, "When I became aware that some of my own students were struggling with homosexual tendencies, it became more personal to me. I want to share the message of God's love with everyone, no matter their race, religion, sexual orientation, or whatever." And again, Tulsi's dad was involved in state politics in the Democratic Party in Hawaii in the early 2000s. And both her and her dad back then were railing against what they called gay agenda, the homosexual agenda. Also, in 2019, he issued a statement regarding disrespectful comments he had made in the past about Islamic religious practices. He continued, "So with great remorse, I had to beg God's forgiveness in my prayers. I also begged the forgiveness of anyone who may have heard or read my offensive words because I knew it must have hurt their hearts. This is why I stopped the distribution of lectures containing such disrespectful statements and learn from this experience not to comment about any religions I haven't carefully, objectively, and respectively studied." In 2022, the Independent and Business Insider published articles on Tulsi Gabbard's ties to SIF that were critical of SIF regarding issues of homophobia and Islamophobia, did not acknowledge Butler's revised stances noted above. In December 2024, after President-elect Donald Trump nominated Gabbard for DNI, the Honolulu Civil Beat, in an in-depth critique of SIF entitled "Senators Urged to Examine Gabbard's Deep and Intense Ties to a Hawaii Sect," highlighted criticisms of SIF regarding homophobia. Fox's Jennifer Griffin further publicized the Civil Beat piece. Neither acknowledged Butler's revised stance. Multiple ex-members of SIF have described it as a cult. Butler was akin to God and not willing to be questioned. They note Butler to have regularly engaged in mocking his devotees publicly. It was said to be a form of Krishna's mercy. Anyways, kind of weird, a little concerning, little weird.
Get confirmed for Director of National Intelligence, a job which some say she's unfit to hold. There are some, including Republicans, who think Gabbard, the former Democratic congressman and Army Reserve officer, out of all President-elect Trump's cabinet picks, is the most dangerous. The concern? That her views are pro-Russia or pro-Assad in Syria, and in general that she could pose a real problem in an intel role that requires the trust of our allies, not to mention interagency coordination. So today's meetings were critical. Gabbard is going to need to shore up support ahead of what could be.
Didn't she appear on our team? Am I making that up? Has she not done appearances on our team? On Russia Today? Tulsi Gabbard RT appearance. She finally commented on the fall of Assad, actually. This was last week.
Ms. Gabbard, do you have any...
for waiting. I just want to start by saying it's great to be here to meet with some of my former colleagues, like Senator Langford, and I'm looking forward to continuing to engage with the senators on the committee and also in the broader Senate as we go through this process.
How would you respond to some of your fellow members describing you as a national security risk?
I want to address the issue that's in the headlines right now. I stand in full support and wholeheartedly agree with the statements that President Trump has made over these last few days with regards to the developments in Syria.
Donald Trump called Assad a butcher, so is she saying she agrees with that too?
My own views and experiences have been shaped by my multiple deployments and seeing firsthand the cost of war and the threat of Islamist terrorism. It's one of the many reasons why I appreciate President Trump's leadership and his election, where he is fully committed, as he has said over and over, to bringing about an end to wars, demonstrating peace through strength, and putting the national security interests and the safety, security, and freedom of the American people first and foremost.
What was your relationship?
Keeping it nice and vague. I support everything Donald Trump said.
A difficult confirmation fight. Sources telling News Nation she sat down with Republicans like Lisa Murkowski and Chuck Grassley and Democrats like John Fetterman and John Ossoff today. That's after Gabbard reportedly struggled to win over Senate.
Tulsi Gabbard is, quote, a regular reader of RT. ABC News. There was a story on this last week where she had former aides saying she used to read RT and try to get us all to read RT as well, which is very, very concerning. Since becoming President-elect Donald Trump's choice for Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard's rosy posture toward Moscow has prompted some Democratic critics to suggest that she could have been compromised, or she could be compromised, and perhaps even a Russian asset, claims ex-Hawaii representative and Army officer claims the ex-Hawaii representative and Army officer is forcefully denied. But former advisors to Gabbard suggest that her views on Russia and its polarizing leader, Vladimir Putin, have been shaped not by some covert intelligence recruitment as far as they know, but instead by her unorthodox media consumption habits. 3 former aides say Gabbard, who left the Democratic Party in 2022, regularly read and shared articles from the Russian news site RT, formerly known as Russia Today, which the U.S. intelligence community characterized in 2017 as the Kremlin's principal international propaganda outlet. And Trump wants to put her in charge of our spies. This is crazy. While it was not clear to those former staffers whether or not she stopped frequenting the site, one former aide said Gabbard, who continued to circulate articles from RT long after she was advised that the outlet was not a credible source of information. Doug London, a retired 34-year veteran intelligence officer, said Gabbard's alleged penchant to rely on, at least in part, on outlets like RT to shape her view of the world reflects poorly on her suitability to fulfill the responsibilities of a director of national intelligence.
Senators last week. A source telling The Hill her meetings were, quote, not going well, with one unnamed Senate Republican saying, quote, I've heard that she's not very well prepared. I have heard not great things. Another GOP member telling The Hill there have even been a lot of eye rolls from lawmakers who sat down with her, although at least one Republican senator, Dan Sullivan of Alaska, expressed his support after their meeting today.
There was one clip of Lindsey Graham making the rounds, looking not very pleased after he hadn't just met with her. Lindsey Graham.
We've had policy differences. I know her. I like her. She wanted to stay in the JCPOA. I thought that was a mistake. But, she'll be serving Trump. We'll see how the hearing goes. I like her. I appreciate she's a lieutenant colonel in the Guard or Reserves. I've known her. We're actually in the same reserve unit. But, when it comes to Syria, how do we keep ISIS from breaking out of jail? We'll see. But
Were you satisfied with her answers on those topics?
she's going to get back with me. We had a very good meeting. And I'm inclined, let's see what the answers are.
Okay, how about headset? You said before you did.
Not exactly a full-throated endorsement from my judgment. Somewhat tepid support there.
Gabbard, not the only Trump nominee with an uphill battle, is still a major fight with regard to Pete Hegseth and Kash Patel ahead, and potentially GOP resistance to Robert Kennedy Jr. We shall see. Joining us now is Mick Mulvaney, former Republican congressman for South Carolina, former acting White House chief of staff, also a News Nation political contributor. All right, Mick, how much of an uphill battle is this for Tulsi Gabbard?
Well, certainly she's got folks' attention. How she became the lightning rod, I'm not really sure. I was a little bit surprised by this, Dan. I thought that Bobby Kennedy would get a little bit more attention, maybe Pete Hegseth or even Kash Patel. So of those 4, I thought she might be one of the more easy ones.
I think RFK will get probably more attention when it comes to the confirmation hearings. Like, pretty much all 4 of these confirmation hearings are guaranteed to be a shit show. The Kash Patel hearing, the one for Tulsi Gabbard, the one for Hegseth, and the one for RFK Jr. I don't know about the rest of them, but those are certainly the most high profile ones. And of all of those hearings, I expect the RFK one to be the most crazy, rowdy, kind of deranged
ones to confirm, but clearly the hearings are not going as well as some people might think. I don't get it, Dan. I don't understand what the objections to her are. I understand that some folks will take objection to some of the statements she's made about Russia and about Syria and so forth, but it strikes me as that's the president's decision. The president gets to decide who he wants. It doesn't make you disqualified for the position because you take some positions that are different than members of the Senate. So I understand that she is facing some friction. In all fairness, and again, I'm not naive about how Washington works. I don't understand what the opposition here is from several folks.
Let me play John Bolton. He's been speaking out against her nomination, laying out, I think, the quote unquote the case. Let's hear what Bolton had to say.
I mean, if you have Republican senators that are speaking off the record saying that she didn't seem prepared for the answers, it's not a great sign. But we just don't know. We just don't know if this Republican Congress is going to serve as any kind of meaningful check on the president. There's a huge question mark there. I really don't know what the answer is, to be honest with you. I have no idea.
I think she's totally unqualified to be a DNI, and I think her positions put her beyond the outermost fringe of American politics. When she visited Assad in Syria, he was effectively a Russian-Iranian ally. It's going to be very interesting to see what the files that may be uncovered in the Syrian government, what they show about a number of Americans.
So, I mean, I think that the heart of the case, right, is about that.
And again, first, it's John Bolton, and I don't mean to minimize it, but John Bolton hates Donald Trump, so he's not exactly an unbiased commentator on this. He's unlikely to like any of Donald Trump's sort of.
It's just funny how everybody who worked with Donald Trump hates him. Isn't that funny?
Nominees, but come back to what he said. He didn't like what he'd said she had done in Syria, talked about Syria, comments she had made, and so forth. It's not John Bolton's decision. It's the president's decision. The president might want people in his office who disagree with him on policies. I thought that was supposed to be a good thing. So again, I'm not trying really hard not to be naive. You don't like her, you don't like her. That's great, but I don't understand why certain policies that don't line up with the Senate are disqualifying for the job.
Well, the Senate will play a role, does play a role, and now let me.
I mean, the fact that the potential head of the potential DNI, Director of National Intelligence, someone who's going to be trusted with all of our country's secrets, got at one point, and maybe still today, got their information from a Russian state media apparatus, is a little concerning to, I think, the grown-ups in the room. It's a little weird.
Let me ask you to put your political cap on. You have any sense of how she's doing so far, of whether she's going to have a hard time?
Yeah, and I think that probably speaks to it. I think you're right to raise that. And here's why. It's always going to be difficult for folks who change parties, because Tulsi leaving the Democrat Party upset all of the Democrats and probably doesn't have as many long-term relationships with the Republicans. Bobby Kennedy is facing some of the same sort of friction for the same.
Did it upset us when she left the party? It didn't surprise me. I wasn't upset. I thought it would take, I thought she would take her time leaning into the right-wing grift. Like, I thought it would be a slow transition. It took Dave Rubin, for example, several years before he, quote unquote, came out as a conservative. And in the case of Tulsi, I think it was within 2 months. 2 months. She was filling in for Tucker Carlson when he was still a Fox News anchor. It was just the fastest transition I've ever seen. It was just lightning fast. And then she also set up a page. I don't know if she was paid to, but she also set up a page on Dave Rubin's failed social media site, which is, what was it called again? Locals. That's what it was. Is it still a thing? Who the f is on Locals? What even is it? You got Laura Loomer, Dog the Bounty Hunter's long lost son. Who are these people? Dan Bongino's on there. Of course, Dave Rubin. There he is. Scott Adams, Dinesh D'Souza, Kim Iverson. Of course, she's there. Steven Crowder's there. What's his name? This guy, Myron Gaines, Russell Brand. Okay, we got some people on here. Breaking Points, obviously. They're going to be on Locals. Yeah, right after she left Congress, and Glenn Greenwald's on here. So there's Tulsi right there. Where did he get the money to pay all these people to? Who isn't? Is it the Koch brothers? Doesn't he get Koch brothers money? Dave Rubin receives funding from the Koch brothers. Ah, okay. Well, there you go.
Reason. Yes, I think this is probably more about politics than it is.
Is it a singular brother now? Wait, did one of the brothers die or become a Democrat? I didn't hear about that.
Anything else? Keep this in mind. Tulsi Gabbard, my understanding is she has a higher security clearance right now, tonight as we have this conversation, than most of the people that are interviewing her in the Senate. She has a TSS.
Why does he keep saying Tulsi? Tulsi Gabbard.
CI clearance, which is as high as John Bolton's is. So clearly somebody trusted her enough to give her that classification. I don't think this is about qualifications. I think it is about politics, and that's not being naive about Washington.
She's even faced pushback from not just Republicans, but also from like Murdoch. New York Post has come out against her. Is that going to have an impact?
Again, is that politically, will it have an impact? Yeah, I mean, Donald Trump reads the New York Post. I think that will have an impact. But if Donald Trump sticks with her, I think she probably makes it. But keep in mind that the New York Post is a right-leaning organization, which is fine, and they probably don't like an ex-Democrat.
Thanks for watching. Go to join and...
I don't know if it's because she's an ex-Democrat. I mean, she's proved herself to be sufficiently loyal to Trump and MAGA. I think it's because you probably do have some adults in the room within the conservative movement right now that are seriously concerned about her because she's a crazy person with dead eyes who belongs to a cult. She's in a cult. No one talks about it. It's just crazy to me.